record on computer. Wait a minute.
Got it. We're recording now.
So, so what we got to do is, go to your other computer and refresh the page, and we're getting them out of the comments. Hello there. I'm Scott Rouse, and this is Greg Hartley, and this is the Body Language Membership. This is our first live Q&A, and we got on a little bit early by accident because I don't know what I'm doing. We're just figuring this out for the first time, and I think my language may have got a little out of hand there, and I apologize for that. But I'll edit it and get rid of it when we first start, before we repost the video in the membership. So, and our first question that we'll go through now. Remember, all you got to do is on YouTube. You're not going to be able to ask questions unless Greg But Greg, we got to keep it in the membership.
Yeah, keep it in the membership, and then we'll go from there.
Because you guys on YouTube, this is our in our live membership thing, a body language membership. And I just don't know how to get off of YouTube yet, since this is our first time. So it's live there too. But anyway, so our first question was from Marza, and it says, oh shoot, now I've lost it. Oh, if someone is raised by parents that didn't smile or use illustrators, what would that affect the children's behavior? Greg, you want to go first?
Yes. So a couple of things. We all learn first from our parents, but then we're soup. We get, the first time you encounter, in one of my books, I forget which one, I talk specifically about alpha behavior. Your parents control resources, so they're your first alpha. You're going to go to them for whatever, and you're look to them for approval. But every one of us experienced culture shock the first time we went to a school, and we had to learn to behave like the other alpha. Yeah. Now, so does it affect you? Certainly. If your parents are Botoxed to hell and can't move their face, like there's a lady one time on one of the shows I watched on TV who could not move her face because of so much of this stuff, then yes, that impacts them, certainly, because they don't have a frame of reference. But there are also a lot of things, and Scott, you'll talk about fusiform gyrus and all those kinds of things, and how the biology of the brain will affect how much you move your face and which muscles you use and those kinds of things, and there's nothing to do with it. If you go back and look at Ekman and his 7 universal emotions, those are all controlled by the brain, not by you as a person copying somebody. So hopefully that helps. Yeah. And Scott, you want to throw in some there as well?
Excellent. Yeah. A lot of times what you'll say, oh, he looks just like his mom, or he looks just like his dad, or she acts like them. That's why, because you're mimicking the behavior that you're growing up with and seeing. So that does affect what happens, because I know there's a guy that lived next door to me when I was a little kid named Edward Klein, and his dad, Milton, would always go, Edward. And so he always went, and so he was doing the same things his dad was doing. It doesn't happen all the time, but you'll see similar mannerisms in families. And that's a good one. That's one of the things you'll see. Then, next up is Gino Clark. My son is 12, a straight A student. I wasn't. He has social anxiety. In groups, he will flatten his face so people can't see how nervous he is. This makes him look disinterested. First, do you think learning about body language is appropriate for a 7th grader? And second, do you think body language would help him with either his anxiety or his own self-image and the way he appears to others? Now, keep in mind, as I'm reading these, I have dyslexia, and you always hear people say, I have dyslexia. I actually have it. So when I'm reading and missing words and stuff, that's on me. Sorry about that, but I think I got that pretty close. I think it would be good for a 7th grader, but you've got to present it in a fashion they can understand. Most of our stuff, we try to keep it so everybody can understand it. Sometimes we'll nerd out and start going into all this technical stuff. I try my best not to do that. But it can give you self-confidence, because once you know what you're seeing in someone else, how they're really reacting to the way you're acting, changes the game. Because it sort of puts you in control. If you're speaking with someone, and we all know in body language, you're looking for the differences in comfort and discomfort. That's one of the number one things you start looking for. When they're speaking with someone and they start seeing discomfort, which would be anything from looking like this to looking like they don't understand. Seeing those, we all see those, but looking for the little tiny things that say that you'll learn when you start getting into body language. That can change the game for you. How quickly they answer your question. We all know the person, if you ask them a question, they go, well, no. We all know what that means. But if they said, no, you might see some grief there. No telling what you're seeing in the brow. I don't know what I was doing at that point. But to know what to look for, that can really help. And to know how you look to other people. It's not just about decoding what you're seeing. It's what you transmit. That's just as important as what you're decoding or what you're seeing. What do you think, Greg?
Yeah, I'd add one caveat. One of the most terrifying things for most people about learning body language is they think everybody can read it. So it could make him less confident unless you explain to him that few people can read this. This is a superpower we're giving. I'm making up that, but this is a superpower we can give you so that you have an edge over other people and you'll be able to see what they're doing. Once he understands that, then I think he's okay. But if you teach an average person body language, you're going to become very self-conscious of their body language day one. I run into that all the time when I'm teaching.
Wow. There's Beth Murphy. She's from, it doesn't say where she's from. SPHR. Do you know what that means?
Nope.
Oh, Sherm. Okay. Yeah, I talk to them all the time. Okay, and Michael O'Reilly. He's from Ireland. He's in here. Wow.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Bonnie. She said, morning, guys. There's Lori Miller. Let's see. Oh, wait.
Not seeing
She's
that
talking
chat,
about me
so
cussing.
it's interesting, yeah.
I must have cussed bad. It must have been bad. Another one from Essex. Janina Vigors. I think that's how I'm saying it, Janina. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. All right, let's see if we got another question in here. Let me scroll down. Loyola Middleton. Hello, Scott and Greg. This is going to be great. I may not have a question this time. I'll enjoy listening to questions and answers. I'm so excited. A huge thank you for this. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Got any more questions?
I'm still looking.
So
Maybe nobody's going to ask anything.
I'll hop on this missing kid case for just a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I haven't had. Now, keep in mind, I haven't had time to watch that. Greg's been sending it to me for like a week and a half. That's how busy I've been editing. I'm 58.
Yeah, so guys, we're talking about the Summer Wells case, and I've seen a lot of people asking questions. So I'm just going to give you a little quick rundown, and I've written most of this out there. One of the things I want you to know is you cannot tell if someone's lying by body language. We're better at it than an average person, but only that much. And the reason is because lots of things can cause that anxiety. What it does for us is allow us to be able to pick up on where we need to probe and what we need to go after. I interrogated prisoners for a long time, and you're after either a confession or break. A break means the person is going to tell you something that they shouldn't tell you. It doesn't mean they're confessing. So they're two different things, intelligence versus law enforcement. And what you find is that anxiety, that comfort versus discomfort can come from a lot of places. Now, we'll say, if you look at the father, when he tells the story about what happened, his cadence goes from bump, bump, bump to boom, 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 mechanical. Red flag. Now, it could simply be because he's repeating what his wife told him. So there's that. I also put a link to something where he's actually excited and his voice lilts a little. That discomfort can come from things like mistrust of authority. You see it culturally in a lot of folks. If you've ever been tangled up with law, they're uncomfortable when they're in front of you, or they're cocky. So we look for that deviation. There are some red flags in his adapting with the kid next to him. There's some red flags with no grief muscle, with an immediate acceptance of the child might be dead, those kinds of things. But culture plays a huge part in that. So if you'll go look at a few notes out there, I just want you to know, yeah, there's some red flags, but it doesn't necessarily mean the person did anything or that they are lying. It could be tied tightly to some other problem. Hopefully it helps. And I knew that one would come up, so I prepared for it.
Okay, 8 minutes ago, Nicole H., just the initial, she asked a question for both Scott and Greg. If possible, can you provide an example when you were able to prevent a problem because you foresaw a reaction of another person? My follow-up question, what skills or techniques do you believe are crucial when it comes to working with people who potentially could have violent behaviors and actions? That's often that. One thing that if Greg and I go out and eat lunch or something, when we go out somewhere, all we really do is watch other people. We'll talk and all that. But we'll say, here's this guy's getting ready to do this. We're getting ready to do that. One time, where were we, Greg? When somebody came in, we said, well, here we go. We thought we were going to have a real problem with this person. We'd been
restaurant. Yeah.
We were at the training place.
Oh,
and
yeah. We went to lunch over at the
barbecue place. Which is pretty good. And we kept watching this situation outside where this guy got out of the car. He got back in. He was looking around, and we knew something was going on. So, of course, as soon as he got out of the car and we saw him do that twice, we're like, hey, here we go. Let's watch this. Then he came in where we were. I'm thinking, this could go sideways quick, So we were ready. If anything had happened, I would be prepared to, or however you're supposed to react in those situations. That's the way we would react. But you see that those kind of things quite often. A lot of times it may be somebody ramping up to do something, then they'll back off, ramping up. I'm trying to be aware of what's going on around me all the time. And some people say, you can't be afraid to live and be. I'm not afraid. I'm just being aware. And with the skill set that we have, and that's all we talk about and think about when we work, that's what we do for a living. You can't help but do that. It does help. If you're talking to someone who you think is going to get a little bit angry with you, or they start getting angry with you, you've got to know the things that lead up to those people swinging at you. My great example of it is, you'll see as you're speaking with someone, or you see somebody who's getting mad at you, you always know if they're getting mad. You're under the impression they're getting mad when their eyes squint up and their forehead does this. They start looking mean, and you never. That's fine. You can say, okay, yeah, I see you're mad. But when they start squinting, and then you can see the whites of their eyes in there, that's when there's a problem, because they're coming down, but their brain's keeping their eyes open so they can see, because their limbic system is firing off and they're getting ready to come at you. That's when I would say start paying attention. Then what you'll see is their face will get pretty flush, just for a little while, just not very long at all. Then and that's fine too. You're good up to this point. But as soon as their face goes almost gray, you see that color leave, that's when they're coming, because their brain has said, okay, let's go. And all their blood runs from their face and it goes out to their muscles, their legs, and their arms. So if they're going to start doing something, they're in fight or flight, but they're going to fight most likely. So that's one of the things you look for up close. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I'll give you 2 or 3 really simple things. The first one is fight or flight does one thing to the brain. The brain is going to immediately turn on protection. And one of the first things we notice in people is their thumbs rotate inward. So if a person's holding their hands this way and they're standing up, their thumbs will rotate inward. And what you're doing is creating kind of an exoskeleton for your body. That's one of the pre-violence indicators and that kind of thing. Doesn't mean they're going to go to violent, but it means something has hit their head and you need to be careful and pay attention to it. That's number one. The second, I'm going to give you 3 good examples. The second is asymmetric behavior. Being able to read, you ask about, had I ever had this happen? One time I rear-ended a lady's car. Never forget it. It just, I'd not had an accident in 20 years. And she was in an acceleration lane. She was talking to her grandchild, and I rear-ended her car. And she got out and she was screaming and yelling and all kinds of crazy. And I could just tell that she was distraught, and it was not violence. It was not. And I hugged her, actually, as odd as that might seem, and it calmed her down. And I said, ma'am, what can I do? Did anybody get hurt? And she started talking to me calmly. We called the police. We took care of everything. Asymmetric behavior often will de-escalate situations. You just have to read the situation.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
He's got Zika.
And then finally, yeah, guys, I fought some virus that's going around the Southeast last week. That's why you see me usually turn my head and turn off the sound in the past couple of weeks. Then finally, when you're in a place where someone is escalating verbally, one of the best things you can possibly do is stand there, and once they're finished ranting, be silent for 30 seconds and then say, hey, I can tell you're upset. What can I do to help? I've never seen a person that doesn't work on. So it de-escalates everything and calms things down. And they feel stupid usually. And they may say, and walk off, but they're not going to keep ranting. Yeah. Just if that's helpful.
All right. This is from Teresa Gill. And her question is, in the early days, did you ever misplace your empathy or compassion to a bad egg who didn't warrant it? Or have you always been strong bad egg detectors? I'm the worst. Stuff like that, because if somebody looks like they're having a problem, they look sad, I automatically empathize with them when I start. Now, if they've done something they shouldn't have done, or they're in question of that, I can sort of, most of the time, I've told Greg a couple of stories where I couldn't, but most of the time you're able to turn that off and approach it from a clinical perspective and find out what you need, so you'll know whether or not you need to be empathetic toward this person. Sometimes you'll see people who look really worried, they look sad and down. That's because they're in trouble if you're talking to them about something they shouldn't have done. So you'll automatically see that. That took a long time for me to get past. But still, there are a couple of people that you'll just keep feeling sorry for, and everybody's is able to be. You can't. Nobody is con proof or fool proof, So there are things to look out for, and after a while, you get used to coming into those situations. So it sort of gives you a good little barrier for everyone. But it's a lot of times it's tough for me, Greg.
Yeah, so I always say to people, I'm like Jane Goodall among the chimps, observing people, making sure I'm paying attention to this. The only problem is I'm also a chimp. So my mirror neurons fire when theirs do. All of those things that make us human are also what make us good at what we're doing. And every one of us is going to make a mistake. We'll make a mistake in judgment. And usually that's going to be something personal for most of us. We'll make bad decisions because of a personal relationship or something we're projecting onto someone. It's one of the problems when you talk about bias, when you're interrogating somebody, that you have to be able to turn off. You have to be able to say, what could be going on in this person's head? Not assume, and ask enough questions. If people ask me always what I care about the most, it's not what somebody's doing. It's why they are doing it. Most of my stuff is tied up in Maslow and that stuff and trying to understand why a person would possibly do this. I'll also answer a question I saw somebody write out on the thing. Can people fake the grief muscle? That's it right there. And so, yeah, you can fake it.
Yeah.
You have to know how, and not most people can't, but yes, you can.
This is from MJ Lorenz. And MJ asks, it says, good afternoon from Dublin. Hey, awesome. So I'm going to repost my request here, which might have been buried in the thread. Apparently, there's a lot more people than I'm seeing. I'm going to get this figured out. Don't worry, I'll get it figured out. Okay, so his question, or MJ, I can't tell if they hear it. Maybe it's a her. Let me blow the thing up. Whoops, sorry, MJ, you're a girl, or a woman, a lady. I don't want to get in trouble for any of that. Whatever you are, I got to watch it. We can't edit this out. Thanks for showing up. Here's your question. When interrogating someone, do you ever confront a person directly when they contradict themselves or say something blatantly alarming? Or will you usually let them talk until they confess properly of their own volition? For example, in last week's the behavior panel episode, there was a stepmother who obviously screwed up big time by changing tense and saying, he used to call me supermom. As an interrogator, would that be a moment where you would directly intervene? Would you always ask more questions, which will eventually lead to a confession?
I'll start here if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
It depends. Interrogation, I always say, is theater for one, and interrogation is about getting through to that person. If it's the right thing to do to just crawl all over them, certainly I'll do that, and I can be real hard-nosed about that. But there are times that it's smarter to do the Columbo move, let them stumble along for an hour and then loop back at the very end and pull it. I'll give you a great example. There's a show called We Can Make You Talk on the History Channel where we did some world interrogation techniques back years ago when I was a young guy and still had hair. And we go through, and there's a young woman there, and all I did to break her is I could tell she's lying. And I said, do you know about eye movement? And she said, well, I've read about it before, but it doesn't really work. And I said, okay, let me show you how it works. And I would say, boom, boom, boom. And every time she'd tell a lie, I'd go, and that's a lie because you've changed your pattern. And that's a lie because you've changed. And she confessed. She just gave me what I wanted. So it depends. And it is very specific to the person. Now, you can't go and be as hard-nosed as I could be as an interrogator with your friends and family, or you won't have them.
All right.
Scott, what you got there?
Oh, I've already forgotten what the question is. I've moved on.
It was, do you call people on it and spank them around?
Yeah, I just, not that I wasn't listening, Greg. Sorry, man. I'm trying to make sure we don't miss anybody.
It's okay. You talk a lot. So.
Well, no. I talk more than you do. Anyway, so yeah, once you collect that information, as someone starts going along and they say they used to or something, then sometimes even Dr. Phil talked about that in this last episode we did on what was that guy's name, Mark Castellano, about what this guy was saying, how he knew the guy had already killed the girl, but he was still, even though he knew, he kept talking to him like he didn't know. So that's one of the keys. So you can keep collecting information. As soon as they know that you've put them on check of, hey, this isn't right. What are you talking about? Used to. That means so-and-so. Then they're going to shut up and they'll know to watch out for that from now on. You're not going to be able to use that in court or use that in anywhere else but in that room with you. When you do that, those are one of those things that just help you make the decision about what you're doing, help you make the decision about this person. Should I go further? Did this person, if they did do it, if I think they did or I think they didn't, you've got to go down the same path. But it helps you put that in the pile of, okay, this doesn't look good for them. This might be a problem for them. And if they answer normally, you can still keep putting it over here in the pile of everything looks okay for them. But even though they may answer a bunch of stuff okay, it's that one or two things like that girl was saying, like, he used to call me this. That's a pretty big red flag. So sometimes what might be this size in their okay pile, one thing over here will be this size and they're not okay pile. So it's the best thing you can do And I post this meme a lot. It's this monkey sitting there, and he's smoking a cigarette. It says something, I can't remember what it says, was when you're sitting there, when you know they're lying, but you just keep listening. So it's just a monkey smoking a cigarette, looking at the camera with his arm up on the chair. So you just want to keep listening and listening so you can put all the stuff together. Then at the end, or as you approach the end, sometimes you'll be able to put the story on TV. They go, you said this, so this happened, and the girl did this. So that's why, I don't know how often that happens. Basically, you're trying to push them into it. You box them in so they feel okay with telling you what happened. So they don't feel like the world is at an end because that happened. They're just telling you what happened, and you're there to help them. Now,
Scott's talking about getting a confession. You're talking about criminal activity. It depends. Mm-hmm. Speed matters. For example, in intelligence interrogation, where you might need to know where weapons are. Yeah, you might immediately call them. It just depends. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, still sorry about the delay here. Okay, this is from Kate. And Kate, I don't know if it's Gravit or Gravit. So I could be saying, however I'm saying, I may be saying it wrong. Is it normal to get irritated by someone if you've known forever, if you start seeing arrogance, smugness, and smugness in their body language? Now that I can't unsee it, I'm unsure how to react to this person. The raised chin when making a point, the closed eye smug, that's what she's talking about. You want to go on that one, Greg?
Yeah, and remember, people are like oysters making a pearl. Their body language and their behavior is an onion, and they keep adding layers. And sometimes people do that, and it just becomes a habit, and that's the only way they know how to talk. The guy we did yesterday, if you've watched this week's behavior panel, the guy always has his nose back, his head up. And is he arrogant? Yeah, that guy was arrogant. But you could also do that because that's just how you are wired. You know, people get in the habit. Somebody asks the very first question, does your parent's body language impact yours? If your parent always held their head up and did this, yeah, then you could be perceived as arrogant because you're doing it. I'd say be careful. You got a long-term friend, you trust them, and you've been with them a while. You know what their relationship is to you. And just because they do that, I'd be careful assigning that body language to being arrogant. Just pay attention. Try to figure out if they do it at times. And, you know, relationships are about two things. All relationships are entitlement and expectations. Everybody's got entitlement in a relationship. We don't always talk about that, but we all have expectations that we may consider entitlements. Just think about that as you go into the relationship and be careful. Over assigning things in body language to personal relationships is dangerous.
Yeah. And Byron Jaffe, a guy I know, he's asking if we have any good books on statement analysis. The guy for statement analysis is Peter Hyatt. He's got a book. What's the name of his book? It's got the word sheep in it.
I forget.
I can't remember the name of it, but I've got it. That's an excellent one, Byron. You'll like that one if you don't already have it. That's one I would suggest. It's the only one I can suggest. So he's like the King Kong of that. So, all right. And here's one from Shira Michael. And I hope I'm saying that right. It's not Shira, but it looks like Shira, might be Shira. Shira asks, what does it mean when someone says they have passed a lie detector test? When is it the questioner's best interest to tell someone they have passed or they have failed, since the machine is just a prop? Doesn't mean anything when you pass a lie detector test. Give me 4 minutes and I can show you exactly how to pass one. It's not hard at all, and it means nothing. The thing is, though, the key to a lie detector test is who's giving the test. Having said that, yeah, because in real life, you can change those. Those are variables you can change. Most of the time, take a Valium or something, and everything stays low. Everything stays pretty mellow. But it's the person doing it. If I ever got in trouble, and here's my suggestion: if you ever get in trouble, and they say, "Do you want to will you take a lie detector test?" You say, "I will." But I want it from the oldest person, the person who's been doing this the longest. Bring me that person. That's the one I want. You don't want somebody who's doing it 6 months. You don't want somebody who just got out of lie detector, out of the polygraph school. You want somebody who's been doing it a long time, because when they ask you questions, that's what sets these things off in you. And they have to know how to ask those questions the correct way. If you get someone who's older, who's been doing that for years and years and years, that's your best shot at getting the most honest outcome of that. But in real life, it means nothing, because it's there. It sets you up to psychologically, think I've got to tell the truth and be careful, and you start doing things, it's sort of an enhancer for body language and deception detection. Greg?
Yeah, a couple of things I would add. I think we left off ave nom sapere too, the scan.
Oh, yeah.
Statement analysis. And I would be careful not to leave Avi off. I mean, he's been around and been doing this for a long time since I was a baby interrogator. So, yeah.
Sorry.
We want to make sure we mention ave nom. The second one is when we talk about lie detectors, I always say a lie detector is a great prop is a good prop for a great interrogator. If you get the right guy running that show, he just sees it as a way to ask the right question, poke, prod, and do those things. Most people who do human intelligence, we don't see as much value as folks who are in law enforcement. So, yeah, there you go.
Oh, Andrea D. just said the Peter Hyde book is wise as a serpent, gentle as a dove. I don't know why I'm thinking sheep. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
And Hyatt and Avi Nom are the two that hop off the plane.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I totally jumped out. Scott is going in and out of focus. Autofocus? Yes. Out of everybody I know, I have the worst camera situation. So
yeah, if you guys are watching us every week, Scott's jerking around with his camera, trying to get his color right and everything else.
And I still look like this. I'm 26 years old. And do you think this makes me look older?
Yeah, I do.
Let's see. Let me refresh this and see what we got. Hang on. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, this is in our membership site. I don't know how to take it off YouTube yet, so get in while you can. This will be the last one. Okay, this will be a good one for you, Greg. From John Michael Vanegas. I hope I'm saying this right. Vanegas. I don't know how to say that, John. How different would counterinterrogation be to interrogations? Is it a reverse engineering type of idea or completely different strategy?
So I dance very carefully around what I tell you about resisting interrogation, which is really what you're talking about. I will just leave it at this. Most interrogators have a limited amount of time, and most of the time that you're trying to get away from an interrogator is about delaying and stalling and getting away from them. That's it. I mean, there are techniques certainly that we use and we teach for people to be able to survive captivity. And my old shift leader, I'll say one of my mentors, a guy named Don Landrum, the bearded one from SEER School, is credited by Mike Durant as saving his life. Mike Durant of Black Hawk Down, who was captured in Mogadishu and who was there for days with a broken back, said that the things we taught him kept him alive. So we don't want to disclose all that. Otherwise, I'd be more than willing to help. I just don't want to sacrifice any person who's fighting in a war and gets captured.
One thing you got to watch for Greg, every time he starts talking about the bearded one, watch him. He gets all serious and quiet and talks about it in these low tones like he's the boogeyman or something.
Hey, by the way, guys, he's coming on for one of our interrogation rooms. He's going to come in and talk to us. He's one of the first Green Berets in the American military. In the U.S. Army, Green Berets are the Special Forces guys. And Special Forces actually are titled a hat they wear as a Green Beret, so they get that title. But he was in Vietnam way, way, way back in the early 60s. When I knew him, he was running the SEER School, and he's just this talented guy I learned a lot from. So we're going to ask him to come and talk to us.
Excellent. Yeah, I can't wait. That's going to be good. I've never met him, but I've heard all these stories you tell about him. I feel like I know him. So when I talk to him, he'll probably be wigged out a little bit because I'll be talking to him telling him stories about himself since I know so many. All right, Nicole Haggith. Hi, Nicole. Along with body language, do you have any suggestions, techniques to help strengthen improved communication skills when information seeking? Thanks so much from Ontario, Canada. Okay, Greg, you want to go first on that one?
Sure. For me, I always think that clear and concise questions when you're after information are important. Now, when you go through interrogator school, it's months and months of sitting there. All these kids that go through get to where they try to talk like robots. You got to be careful you don't do that, but use interrogatives, basic, clear questions. One of the things, and when you're doing eye movements, you ask questions that isolate sensory channels so a person's not trying to figure out what you're asking for. So if you ask who, what, when, where, why, how, what else, and Those are just really good interrogatives. If you get to that point, you'll get a lot of information. The most important question out of that whole bunch is what else? Because people always hold on to a little bit of information. I was a construction manager for years. And in that project management world, I would often ask a guy, hey, what else do you know about this job I don't know? And they would hold that little tidbit. People in the interrogation room hold a little tidbit. And if you ask what else, they'll give it to you. That's the most powerful communication, single question you can learn.
All right. Here's one from Bruce Stevens. How does facial hair affect body language? At inches? I don't know. I don't know. Well, from a psychological point of view, if you, I think IBM did the study. If you have a beard and you're in a business situation, your trust level, the level of trusting is down a little bit from someone who doesn't have a beard. So body language wise, you can still see little movements because you can still see pretty much what's going on. You might miss some micro expressions, but film it and it's go cultural. Back and watch over it slow. Yeah. It's a cultural thing.
If you go to the Middle East, people without facial hair are seen the other way, right? So it depends. Like Arab culture, most men have facial hair. And I would tell you that the nuance of muscles may be hidden, but most of the stuff's still there. And so you can still read all the rest of the body language. And if you're looking for like these incisivus muscles to cave when somebody's about to cry, and that facial hair even overstates that. So yeah, I'm with Scott. Micro gestures, you might miss some, but it's not a big issue.
Here's one from Jenna Biazinski. I think I'm saying that right. Can you give an example of a poorly framed question? Yeah, Greg, why don't you go with this? And then let's talk about Jim Powell, because he's coming on here.
Here's the simplest poorly framed question you can ask. Y'all don't want no help, do you? A kid goes into a store trying to get a job and asks, y'all don't want no help, do you? That's called a negative question. Well, what are you supposed to say to that? Well, what you're supposed to say is no. Another one is, are you going to the store or the movies? Well, if you're after information quickly, you want to say, are you going to the store? No. Are you going to the movies? Yes. If you ask a question that has an or in it, then they get to answer whichever part they want to say. They can say no. They make the question hard for you to get the data you're after, and then you have to ask again. So just keep it clean. And the less convoluted, the less compound a question is, the easier it is for a person to get their head around what you're asking and answer.
All right. Here's a question from David Shaw. All right. David asks, this feels so weird when I say that. Because you can
pronounce your name.
Yeah, no kidding. But it's so weird saying, David Shaw would like to know. Okay. It seems when reading body language, you have to make some assumptions or guesses about the people you're reading. How accurate are these assumptions? Do they become more accurate over time? It goes back to baselining. So sometimes you're spot on, man. You get right on the money, and sometimes you're not. But as you go through your conversation with them or your interrogation with them, you keep comparing how they were when you first talked to them compared to the way they're asking now. When you go into these situations, you'll ask questions that you know the answer to, but you'll pretend you don't know. And then you'll ask them questions. Obviously, when the questions come up where you don't know the answer to them, you'll have a pretty good idea of how they answer questions when they're making stuff up, if they weren't honest about the questions where you knew the answers. And if they're being dishonest about the ones where you're asking questions and they're not being dishonest or not being honest, you'll be able to tell the difference in those things and those questions. And you'll start collecting that information, and you'll start comparing everything to those. Greg, you can answer that better than I can.
No. Conversations are simply sine waves moving along. When I'm talking to someone, I hear to-do. Scott calls it loping. I call it cadence. Boom, 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 boom. When something changes, whether that's and I break communication down into verbal, what you say, vocal, how you say it, so pitch, tone, and cadence, and then all this other stuff we call nonverbals, and all those should line up just like on a polygraph. And so all you're really looking for, you don't have to know this person well. Talk about things that don't matter. Hey, what's your favorite drink? That kind of thing. You're sitting talking to somebody and they're loping along, their cadence is this, and then suddenly something changes. We micro interview is the term we use. We stop caring about all that other stuff because we found something that's wrong. And when you open it up and start to micro interview again, you'll get the blip in a smaller place and more narrowly focused, and you just keep doing that. That's how you do it. And you can do it in everyday conversation. It's not hard.
Okay. This one's from Sabrina. And Sabrina's last name is spelled Fenybesi. How do you say that? It's FENYBESI.
Don't know.
Oh, wow. I bet she hears that all. I know you're not offended, Sabrina, because I know that happens all the time. I'm sure it does.
Well,
she says,
all folks on this global call, we're going to get lots of names Scott can't pronounce, so just bear with us, guys.
and I think I said I'm dyslexic as well, so maybe I'm not reading it right. But anyway, Sabrina, I'm sorry I can't pronounce your last name. As an elementary teacher, when I look for some of the horrific things parents have done to their children and then it's found out too late, I'm very aware that it could happen to one of my students one day. How do I detect the red flags ahead of time in both my students and in interacting with the parents? And is there anything that I could be asking and then watching for in their response? One thing about little kids, if a child is one thing when I talk about this with people who are in a similar position that you're in, when you see a little child and you watch a little kid run around talking, playing and stuff, and an adult comes up and that child gives it one of these. If they don't do it to everyone around them, but if they start doing this and their hands come down and cover their crotch, or they start look at them like this, they go sideways, that shoulder comes up, that's too big. But you'll notice these things where they'll get smaller and they'll keep an eye on them. Their head will go down to protect their neck. The limbic system kicks in, like what's going on? There's a lot of things you can look for that will tell you something's not right there, especially if it's an outsider, maybe not the parent. Gosh, I'm going in and out, folks. Why? Sorry about that. There's just so many things you can look for. Those are the main things. Look for that, how they get quiet and they come in to hug them or kiss them and they get all balled up like this. Most people, they won't do, little children won't be like that with. But if that one person comes in, a neighbor, member of your family, whoever it is, no matter who it is, once they start that's when you start watching out for what's going on between those two, and don't leave them alone. I'm not saying if that happens at your house, it doesn't mean that your aunt who comes in doesn't do this too hard on your little kid's face, and that's why they don't like him. I had an aunt that did that all the time, and it was funny. She did it so hard to all of us, it was funny. But as we grew up, we realized that was funny. But we always were wary when she came around. She'd go, "You're the sweetest thing," and just pinched the crap out of it. So there are a lot of things to look for. The parents with the child. How does the parent act around the child react to the parent when they show up? If the child is already there, do they do those things that they look like, oh, my mom or dad's here, or they look, oh no, this might not be good? Watch their reactions to them. You'll be able to tell what it is. And I hate to say it like this, but you're a woman, so your brain is a lot different than men's brains. It's much more powerful in grabbing information. Just so there's the caveat there, or I'm letting you know that I'm not just saying that's not something I believe. That's science. We know that's a fact. So you'll get that women's intuition that says something's not right here. So keep an eye on that, and that'll give you a good idea of what's happening. Greg, you want to add to that?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is I'm not going to add a whole lot. If children are mature beyond their years, and I don't mean, smart, wise, that kind of thing, but if they're mature beyond their years to more like puberty way too early, that's a standout indicator other than what Scott's talking about, usually that something is up. Doesn't mean that behavior can't occur for no reason, but usually when people are reaching maturity at 5 years old, meaning the way they behave, that's probably a red flag. And if you're teaching primary school or elementary school, probably a thing that you've seen. And doesn't mean, again, humans are very complex creatures, and what they're exposed to creates different ways of being and thinking. But those are red flags.
All right. Since people with antisocial personality disorder have no empathy, how can they mimic emotions? They're talking about psychopaths. How can they mimic emotions? Since they don't have mirror neurons, and can you analyze Edward Snowden? I got a weird feeling about that cat. I've never really watched much Edward Snowden. That whole thing it seems too political. I'm not into politics at all, so I shouldn't even say that, but I'm really not. So how can they mimic emotions? That's how they learn to get along in society. Up to that point, they can recognize fear, but they don't know how to create these expressions of happiness and joy and sadness. They don't know how to differentiate those. So they have a problem doing that. So what they do is they study you. The story I always tell is this, how psychopaths find out they're psychopaths. Let's say if you were one, what would probably happen is this. Let's say if you lived in Nashville and you'd be 23, 24 years old. You may be a little bit older than that. You may be a little bit younger than that. And you probably live downtown where the bomb went off at Christmas, down there in one of the lofts or something. I'm not saying people that live down there are psychopaths, but hear me out as we go along, because I know some people down there. So you let's say, because you want to be around, you wouldn't live in a small town, most likely. If you get out of the large town, you want the small town, you want to live in a large town, and you probably go to where all the action is. Because as a psychopath, since you have not just no empathy, you really have no feelings really whatsoever. You can get angry, and there's a whole 4 hours that can go with that. But to make a long story short, you want to be where there's excitement, because that gives you that actually gives you a little adrenaline rush, where there's a lot of people and things going on. So when you live there, let's say it's a Friday night, and that Friday night you go, you know what? I think I'm going to have sweet and sour chicken for dinner. I'm going to go ahead and get some sweet and sour chicken, then I'm going to watch TV or whatever. So yeah, it sounds like a boring person. Before I go out and this evening, that's what I'm going to do, is get sweet and sour chicken. So you go outside and you walk down 2nd Avenue. As you're walking down 2nd Avenue, you see about halfway down a bunch of police cars, and there's an ambulance, and you hear a lot of people making noise. And the closer you get, you know something important's happened. That's the way it feels. Oh, something important's happened. And you get down there and you look and you see a little child has been run over, and you see the mother over the child. And she's crying and weeping, and they're trying to pull her away from the child, but obviously the child isn't with us anymore, right? So then you see that, and you're sitting there looking at that, and you go, you know what? I'm doing Mugu Gai Pan. I don't want sweet and sour chicken anymore. It's going to be Mugu Gai Pan. And then you go off and you get your Mugu Gai Pan, you go home and eat it. Now, a couple hours later, you'll find yourself in the bathroom mirror trying to mimic those expressions you saw in the woman that was crying over the child, because you don't know what that is. You know, situations come up where you see that, but you're like, I'm going to find out what this is. It's not like this feeling of concern, but you decide, if I'm going to get along, now I don't know what that is. Obviously, these people know something I don't. So I'm going to learn how to do that. So they'll learn how to look like they're crying. They'll learn how to look worried. They'll learn how to look happy, sad. And what they'll do is they'll mimic you. And when you find one that's fairly smart, they'll start watching. You'll as you hang out with them, you'll start seeing them do the behaviors you do. Not like the behavior virus things we talk about, where somebody does the same like this all the time. They hang around somebody does this all the time. They start doing this all the time. They'll start mimicking things you say and looks you use. There was one guy that I dealt with, and I tell this story all the time too. And he ended up being a horrible guy. He's a psychopath. Lives in Canada now. He tells everybody he's been nominated for a Grammy, but he hasn't. That was mine. And he tells everybody it was his. So I know this guy. And he tells everybody now he's been in the fishing business for years, and he works at some fishing place, right, in Canada. If he comes back to America, he goes to the pokey. And one time I was talking about taxes. And I said, I won't use the cuss words, but I said, gosh dang it, taxes. I hate that. I can't believe we have to pay so much for this. And I went on and I use these specific expletives and went along my usual how I cuss about taxes. And about 3 months later, I'm in this place called The Palm. It's a restaurant in Nashville. And they have these booths, and I'm sitting in a booth, and I hear this guy talking. I'm like, oh, I know that guy. And before I could turn around, he's saying the exact same thing I said in the exact same tone I use, a lot of things that I just said. He was saying them almost verbatim with the same tone. And some of those things are my own that I've made up that are fairly graphic about taxes. And he was using them, and that's fine. But he was using them exactly like I was. And I listened for a couple of other things because my bells and whistles started going off going, hey, man, something's not right here. And come to find out, this was one of the most horrible people I'd ever met in my life. Can't give you the details yet. I will one day, but really, really, really bad guy. Greg, you want to add to that?
No, I don't think I can. I just think the big thing to remember with psychopaths, there's a lot of study going on now. There's a study out of, I think it's Sussex, but there's a university study that shows pupil dilation in psychopaths only occurs to positive, not to negative things, meaning they're not perceiving things the same way we are. But okay. All people can learn to mimic body language. They just have to do it, and yeah, the thing to remember, guys, look at, you probably can't see my forehead very well in here, but I got all kinds of etching and permanent marks because I use my forehead when I talk. And anybody who does, their face is going to develop these lines that are permanent and stay there. And if you see those and they're not using them, something's up. If you don't see anything and they're suddenly using stuff, that's odd too. So yeah, it's just look for residuals because it tells you how a person uses their body and their face.
I just turned off autofocus. Maybe that's helping. Yeah, that was a problem. Okay. I'm so glad they said that because I've seen that. Yeah, it's making me sick at my stomach to watch me do that. Okay, Robin Marlowe. Robin Marlowe asks, isn't learning body language in order to manipulate a group of people or a person to do something you want them to do, whether good or bad, just another form of deception? Not really. You're just enhancing what you're doing. Now, in interrogation, it's different. Yeah, you're totally acting a specific way. You're totally setting up questions a specific way to deceive that person into thinking you're there to help them and you want the best thing for them. And when the best thing for them is to go to prison if they've done what they are accused of doing. So not really. When it comes out in the wild, it's more of an enhancement, really. So it helps you get along with people because you can get a better understanding of how they feel about the situation going on, or you. Or you may see them, they may have a problem you may be able to help them with, but they may not be saying there's a problem. We've all seen those people who have something going on, like, sorry, dude, I was going through whatever it was at the time. And you totally miss what's going on. And you think they're being mad at you or not into you or something. But you'll see cues and things that will tell you that they're thinking that they've got inner dialogue going on that has nothing to do with you. Greg?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is any skill you learn about people can be used for good or bad. And interrogation, you can call interrogation good or bad. If you're the guy on the receiving end of it, it's bad. I always said when I interrogated enemy prisoners of war, they're just trying to serve their country. So they've not done anything evil or wrong. Some, you may run into somebody who committed war crimes, different story. But getting information is important. Now, if you're the kind of person who wants to go and do that to your friends and neighbors and manipulate them the same way an interrogator does, that's probably not very healthy. But being smart enough to recognize when a person is feeling stress and using those things, it's not deception. And using body language for positive, you just have to figure out which way you're going to use whatever power you get from body language. And it's up to you what kind of person you are and how you use it with other people. Can it be used for bad? Sure. I mean, guys who instinctively do this are con men and folks like that. They instinctively do it. They can read people without having to learn it as a skill.
Yeah. And Janita Vickers asks, the late night DJ Scott, okay, is it a Columbo clip played backwards at the end of each video? And what does he say? On the behavior panel, we're all big Columbo heads. So at the end, and I've started to turn the volume up on it, there's something happening backwards. The very last thing you hear after the little things pop up and the little, watch this next. As that pops up, there's a long silence and you hear this thing talking backwards. It's Columbo. And he says to this lady, he says, well, just one more thing, or ma'am, just one more thing. So that's what's backwards. Now, if you listen up, I'll tell you guys, but I haven't mentioned this yet. Nobody's brought it up. Is at the very beginning of the episodes, right before I start talking, you hear this thing go, and that's Columbo as well. And he's saying, what do you got? So I found one in there where Columbo actually says, what do you got to somebody? So so that's what that is. So yeah, there are two things backwards in there. That's just our hat tip thing to Columbo because we're all big Columbo heads. Let's see. I got to say it one more time. If you're on YouTube, we're not reading your questions because this is supposed to be private and it's in our body language membership. And I don't know how to take it off of there and make it private yet, but I will next time. So if you want to watch it, come into bodylanguagemembership.com. If you want to be part of this, we have the best time in here. Hi, Tracy Pohl. There's Eric Hundley. Can Greg talk of the different types of interrogation? Now, Eric Hundley he's got his own show and his own podcast. I never can structure unstructured. I don't know.
And if you haven't watched Eric, go watch Eric. He gets some of the most interesting people on earth, and us occasionally, but he gets a lot of really interesting folks.
And we consider him our fifth Beatle of the behavior panel. He was there when we very first started. He's one of the first guys we hooked up with. Great guy.
So you want me to talk about different kinds of interrogation? So there are lots of kinds. interrogation is defined as getting the most information as quickly as possible. So it's all about method. It's all about process. And there are coercive methods some armies use, and unfortunately the U.S. government had some coercive means in recent years. Non-coercive, which is the Hans Scharf kind, and it's based on finding a person's drives and getting them to talk. Highly tied to Maslow, where a person feels like they belong. And that uses a bunch of approaches or psychological ploys to get the person to feel like they should talk. And it's tricks, ruses, and ploys. It's just a way to get that person to feel confident enough in you and to get to a new way of trust and start talking to you. So people torture. It isn't effective. We know that, so why use it? There's non-coercive intelligence interrogation. There's non-coercive other kinds of interrogation. But intelligence is about getting actionable information immediately. So, and here's the interesting piece. It's one channel. Interrogation, then you go to signals intelligence or another kind of intelligence before you would target, because you don't want to rain artillery down on a target that somebody told you is a bad guy. So that's intelligence. Then there's police interrogation for information, police interrogation for confession. Because if you don't know who it is, investigative interrogation is not trying to get closed to a confession. Once you know who it is and you're pretty sure, then you're going after confession, and that's a very different ballgame. So all those pieces come together, and there's even more we could talk. But just so you know, intelligence, law enforcement investigative, law enforcement confession, and then there's a couple of others. There's elicitation, which is not even an interrogation technique, but when you're talking to somebody on the street and getting information.
Yeah.
And we'll cover those in detail in the course material we're putting up.
Nicole asks, how do you stay mentally strong when you're dealing with someone regularly who has been diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, a psychopath? Keep in mind, there's nobody in there. It's just a body running around. There's nobody in there. It doesn't matter. You're dealing with an ego, so you don't want it mad at you. And I say it because that's what it is. They're, in my opinion, they're not even humans. So you're dealing with somebody who has no person in there. It doesn't bother me at all. I don't mind talking to them. That's me personally. If you have to deal with one, keep in mind the only thing you're dealing with there is an ego. So, and you can control that ego, that person with that ego, depending on how you brush up against it. Are you nice to that? Are you blowing the ego up because you want to do something for you? Are you pretending that something bothers you about it, so it thinks, well, something's wrong, I need to change this? It's a little game you play. You got to be real careful with it because you don't want it to go sideways on you. But I always personally keep in mind, since you're asking about how we do it, it doesn't bother me at all. They don't bother me at all. I don't, and this sounds horrible, but no, I'm not going to say that. But I don't care about them at all. I have no feelings or empathy toward them whatsoever because it's not a human. It's just a body running around. And some of them do some really horrible things. Not all of them. A lot of them, you'll never know we're a psychopath. They won't know they're a psychopath. Have no earthly idea. They're just getting along, acting normal. What they see is normal. But some people are just mean, and some people do a lot of horrible things to a lot of people or to children or whatever they do. Those people, after a while, they'll stand out. And if you know what you're looking at, or if somebody around there catches them, like law enforcement, if they get in trouble, then that, good, that's great. But if you're dealing with them, just remember you're dealing with an ego. That's all it is. Greg, you want to add to that?
Yeah. So when I've been asked how you interrogate a person like that, what you typically do is you suck up to them, get close to them. So pride and ego up. I tell them how great they are. And then I start to whittle and say, well, maybe you aren't so great because, and then they get upset and they tell you how great they are. But that's about getting information. Your life, your daily life is about entitlements and expectations. If it's about entitlement, somebody stepping on your entitlement, remember, not all people who are psychopaths or any kind of antisocial disorder are poorly intended. They just have a different challenge than other folks. So just remember that when you're trying to think about people. And what I would say is draw lines around what people are allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. That's what entitlement is. If you have an expectation and no entitlement, you're probably not going to get it. And that's actually, I think a lot of relationships, whether they're romantic relationships or other relationships, disintegrate over expectation versus entitlement. I'll leave it at that.
All right. Let's see. This is from Loyola, Middleton. With all the different types of people that you've had to deal with, do you find it hard at times to see the positive in people? Do even the positive people at times seem insincere, not always genuine? I don't have problems looking for my wife may say differently, but I don't have problems looking for the positive in people, because I'm trying to see who is a good person or a bad person. I don't like, and nobody likes bad people, but I I'm on the lookout for that. So I don't find it hard at all, Greg?
No, I actually enjoy people. My wife would tell you she can't imagine me going for years without talking to people. I like meeting new people. And most people, it's Maslow's hierarchy, right? Most people, see me doing this all the time because that's and Eric's probably chuckling, but that's how I look at interrogation. That's how I look at everything. Most people get up in the morning wanting to belong to a social group. Now, antisocial disorders can do some damage to that. And then they want to differentiate or develop some esteem. And some people can do that through ugly things to other people, but most of us get up in the morning not wanting to hurt others, but to take a step to get to a higher place. And I try to look for the best in people. I would say when I go to a party, if my wife sees somebody she doesn't think is altogether good, she'll say, turn on your skills and go talk to that guy. Because I try not to turn on all this when I'm talking to an average person. Some of it screams and leaks, but I have said many times I could talk to Charles Manson as easily as I could talk to the ice cream guy, not because I think they have equal value, but I want to know why Charles Manson thinks that way. And if you want to know why, if why is your driver, people are always interesting because every person's their own little kind of microcosm of lots of experiences and lots of stuff that causes them to behave that way. So I'm always interested. Long-winded answer, but I'm still interested in people.
Yeah. All right, Marilyn Page. Do people ever avoid you because they worry about you can read their faces and minds? You can't read minds. All body language does is give you an idea of what that person might be thinking and what they might do. Everybody's different, so it's you try to have. It's odd trying to get somebody to go to lunch with you after they go, you do what? And after that, things may change for a while. But things will, pretty soon they'll forget about that. That doesn't enter into it. And what you always say is, and I think this is so funny, because people say, well, can you ever turn it off? And you go, oh, yeah. You just turn it on when you go into a thing. That's one of the funniest things I ever hear, because you hear a lot of people saying that. Can you turn it off? And when you're at with a bunch of friends and stuff. Obviously, when you're with your friends and family, you don't see a lot of stuff. You're not looking for anything. But if one person outside that comes in, ding, 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 everything comes on and it all goes toward them. But yeah, quite often people will think that and say that. Greg and I had lunch a while back with somebody, and a friend of theirs came up who knew what we did for a living, and she was acting all a little weird and stuff, and come to find out that was the reason why, because she thought, since we were together, there was this big, scan going on where we're like, yeah, let's find out what this person's thinking and doing, whatever. And they thought, and they were acting really weird, and that was why they were acting weird. But you can spot that after a while, because they'll sit up too straight and they'll act weird, and they'll watch what they say, and they'll get this little weird looking smile on their face. And then you got to go, hey man, what are you doing? You look really weird. What's going on? They go, I'm sorry, I think you're reading whatever. Yeah. So you'll hear, and I'll always say it. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. You can turn it off. It's not that big a deal. It doesn't work that way when it actually does work that way. So, but we're in here, so I'm not going to say it outside of here. But I know it's on YouTube. But what are you going to do? I'll take that off. Greg?
Yeah, no, now I forget what the question was, but the question was...
I'll tell you, do people ever avoid you because they worry you can read their faces and minds?
So I always call it my Darth Vader costume. It makes people afraid of me for no reason. And I say, look, I'm really interested in why you're doing what you're doing. The body language stuff is a skill set. It brought me to this, but the driver, why a person does what they do, all that stuff is behind the scenes for me. So I like to try to motivate people to do good things and to motivate teams to deliver. And anybody who's ever worked for or with me would tell you that's my real driver. So once they get past that and they're no longer afraid of it, they're comfortable. So yeah, but people up front, it's a Darth Vader costume. Just leave it at that.
Just spelled John's name wrong. Sorry, John Kingston, I just spelled your name wrong. I'm correcting it now. Let's see. Deb Murphy, is there a trash can behind you to your right, Scott? Well, it's actually my left. I guess it would be to your right. Yeah, I had to spit my gum out. Sorry, I keep forgetting. I'll sneak it in, and I got to get rid of it. And that's just, yeah, that's rude. I got to quit doing that. We get so many comments about me doing that. I got to. It's not funny. I need to stop it. Let's see. Ooh. I'm coming up with, let's see. Let me find another one here. Oh, these are just comments. I think, okay, Lee McLean. I think fading facts is my new favorite thing to look for in interrogation interviews I watch. What's yours? Let me explain what fading facts are. Fading facts are when a person is explaining something or giving you information, and as they get to the end of that, the question starts getting quieter as they go along. It just starts happening because their brain's saying, "Man, this is not right. We can't. You need to shut up." So they'll start giving you, "Is that your red car? What did you do before you came here?" "Well, we went to McDonald's, then we went over to the dropped the kids off over there at their friend's house, and then I went to Jim's place for just a little while and kind of hung out some." The problem starts when I went over to Jim's place and started to hang out some, because that's when it almost goes away. So you're listening to the volume go down, not because they're running out of breath, not because there's another something going on in the context of what's happening, but when you ask them a question, everything's been fine up to that point, going back to the baseline, then there's a situation there that, and it may not be a big lie, but if it was an interrogation or talking about somebody murdering somebody or something, that's when one of the things that you need that would pop out would be the fading facts there. Greg, you want to add to that?
Sure. I look for hyper attentive, or what I've traditionally called glossy. When you're talking to a person, they suddenly go, "No, why do you ask?" And you become their whole focus. Their entire face lights, their eyes drill in on you, and everything is hyper attentive. That for me is one of my best red flags, because when that happens, now I know I got to turn on other things and start going after them. And I go look for verbal bridging and all those things as a result of it. And yeah, everybody has a favorite. That's mine.
Explain glossy.
All I mean by glossy is if you were to take a picture of somebody, they look like, everybody else. But if you do a headshot, like an 8x10 glossy, that's going to be their best foot forward, and they're going to have all that pretend kind of posture and that kind of thing. And that's what happens when a person goes hyper focused on you. They're locked in, their body may move, but their head's staying in the same place. They're robocopping and doing all that kind of thing. It's funny as it can be.
All right. Our next question comes from Yvette Sladen Dean. Does doing what you do ruin watching films for you? If the actor is not just good at body language, it must stand out so much to you both. Greg, you want to go first?
Yeah, two things. For me, it's horrible. It's just horrible to watch somebody who can't act and who's not internalizing and doing all that. The other one that's really weird for me is I can't watch most war movies or that kind of thing, because once you work in that world, you're like, yeah, that's crap. That's garbage. And the funny thing is how many people you run into have watched so many combat movies and war movies that they can predict better what's going to happen because they're experts in movie combat than soldiers would. And so it's always, that for me is a tougher thing to watch, those kinds of things.
A lot of times it does for me, because let's talk about Columbo. There's this one Columbo episode where, and if you're young and you've never seen Columbo, we're talking like old people, I guess, but it's still a great show if you watch it. There's this candidate who gets in trouble, and he pretends like he's like somebody's trying to kill him. So he's locked himself in this hotel room because it's during the voting time, And so he says somebody's been shooting through the window at him. So he lights a firecracker or something. And then everybody comes running in the room because he's by himself. But his whole campaign people are out there in the lobby of his hotel. He's in the bedroom, and where where the desk and stuff is. Everybody else is out there in the little, I guess it's a suite, out there in the where the couches and things are. And so he lights off this firecracker, and everybody comes running in. And the cop that's there comes in, and he's got his gun out, but he's got his finger on the trigger. And as he's moving everybody, he's pushing everybody around. It's right up next to the heads of these people he's pushing around. And I was like, oh my God. So and that's called trigger discipline. You don't want to put your finger on the trigger till you're ready to go. And he's running around with this gun he pulls out in this crowd of people, and he's pushing people around with this gun, and you see it to the back of some of these people's heads as he's pushing them around. Those kind of things bother me. I look for those kind of things. But my favorite actor is, and I'm going to sound so, I I don't know, but it's Brad Pitt. I think Brad Pitt is acting normally. And, you know, when he acts normally, I think he's a great actor. He's my favorite one. When he was in name any of them, he knows how to act like nothing's happening. We have to train people to stand around and act like narcotics guys, act like nothing's happening, to act like they're bored and just waiting on somebody. There's specific things you do. He looks like he's just hanging out, waiting around for something to do. When he's eating something, he looks like he's eating something. I mean, it looks like most people, when they do it on camera, on TV shows and movies, a lot of times they'll look odd. Most actors, they don't have a problem with it. But man, he looks like he's just hanging around. There's an art to that. So when I see that guy, I go, wow, I don't see many problems with what he's doing at all. But some of them you see him, and it's the worst, especially when there's a killer in the basement and they come up and they hear something. I think there's something in the basement. You'd never go down to the basement. You wouldn't go near the basement. You wouldn't go, you go, what the hell is that? And you call the cops, even if you're out in the middle of the woods and you think you hear something in the basement, your brain goes, that's a witch or that's a werewolf, whatever it is, you would leave. There's no, I wonder what's down there. Honey, wait here. None of that whatsoever. You would leave. I know I would leave. But so the reactions you see with people in movies and TV shows are just so, when something big happens and they go, what? And it's something you should go, oh man, and run. I don't know. A lot of those things really bother me. Yeah, I get worked up over that because those do bother me. And my wife gets mad because I'm always mouthing off. I'm always, no matter who's doing something or saying something on TV, I'm always mouthing off about it. But especially when they, like if the acting's really horrible, like on The Good Witch, then my wife, when they say, well, what should I do now? And then I'll add, go back to acting class, those kind of things, because their acting is so horrible. But yeah, I get worked up over some of those things when it comes, especially with the acting and body language. Greg, you want to add anything to my rant?
Nope. I got mine.
Let's see.
Because I think we're going to run out of time before we.
Oh, yeah. You got a meeting. And I've got one too. Let's see. What's another good quest? Find one more. It's all about Columbo stuff. Dang it. Hang on one second. Looking for one. Come on. Almost there. Gosh, this is getting boring. Greg, could you do a dance or something or jump around?
Yeah, I don't dance much.
Start the puppet show while I'm doing this.
Yeah, guys, while Scott's looking, thanks for this first round. And it's been a little awkward for us because we're learning all the software, but thank you for being here and thanks for all the great questions. We'll look forward to all these and I'll read through chats and that to see, and through the community to see what kinds of things we should talk about. We appreciate all your support. This is, as we've gotten this thing stood up, I'm working on a few eye movement classes for the body language membership piece that we'll put in the academy, and we'll work from there.
Yeah, because we're coming up on the first of the month, so we're going to start piling stuff in again. And we're hoping we're not putting too much in so you don't get overwhelmed. That's the key to this thing. Let us know. We don't want you to be overwhelmed. We want you to have enough information that you've got something there. We appreciate the community comments and the back and forth that we're having there. It gives us a chance to weigh in on some things we don't have time for most of the time because we can't get on the camera every day because of other commitments, but we can certainly go in and answer your questions and that. But I've been having fun on these the Zoom meetups. Oh, yeah, those are pretty fun.
The ones that
because some people don't want to know about body language. They just want to sit around and talk. And that's fun too, So get in there. I know it takes, they go quickly. So when we open those things up, get in there and snag you one. And because I think I have 3 today. We have 3. I think we got 3 on the books today. But I know you're in the middle of it, so I'll handle them. So don't worry about that.
Yeah. Greg, guys, I'll make it when I can. Yep.
Yeah. Greg's busy. He's really busy. I'm like pretend busy most of the time. It just looks like I am. So thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. We're glad you're here. And if you have any questions, of course, keep asking them. We try to get in the membership part, in the community part, as much as we can, and answer questions. Like yesterday, I was totally gone because we had a show that we were just finished. For the behavior panel thing, so I got to edit all that. And I don't know what I'm doing, so it takes so long. But then again, we're going to start putting stuff in, so we're trying not to pile it on you. So you go, I got to catch up. I've got to do this. I feel so far behind. We're not going to do that to you, so don't worry about that. But we'll be adding stuff. If you have any suggestions or questions, of course, leave them in the comments. And again, like Greg was saying, sorry this has been kind of wonky, a wonky start to this, but we're just figuring it out. So, but this will replay. I'll post this in maybe here. Maybe I'll have a special place. I'll have a thing for all the live Q&A, so you can go there and watch all of them if you want. So this will be in. Give me the rest of the day to get this in there. So it'll take a minute, but I'll get it done. What were you going to say, Greg?
No, I was just going to say thanks a lot and good. Enjoyed it. Enjoyed all the questions.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. And we'll see you on the inside.